Hey, what's up guys, Custom Mods here. Just want to make a video today about AutoExec files. There's really a lot of videos about this topic and I feel like a lot of them are just missing the important points. Hoping to go over all of those points today and just a lot of things that I've discovered in this topic. Once again, this is a very important topic regardless of your skill level, and hope you enjoy. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I'll be happy to address them. Thanks guys. We're going to go over some of the basics. I'm going to be very brief about it. We're going to go over how to bind a key. So you're going to type the word bind with a space. You're going to tell it what you're binding to it. So we're binding by P250 to key 7. So whenever I press 7 in game, it's going to try to buy a P250. In order to unbind the key, you're just going to say unbind and what key you're trying to unbind. These quotation marks are not necessary. They're only necessary when there's going to be a space. So for instance, down here you see how there's more than one thing going on and there's spaces. This would need its quotation marks, but this wouldn't because it's just one thing. But we'll go into this one in just a moment. So we just went over unbind. Creating an alias is pretty much saying I'm giving this a name. So we're going to say alias space the name, what the name is doing. So whenever I say P25, I want the game to know that it needs to buy a P250. So what is this good for? We can come up to something like this where you see that I'm trying to buy a P250 up here. That's my goal for key 7. We're going to change that to P25. So now when you press 7, it's going to say do P25. It's going to look around for that and find this, and it's going to say, okay, he called P25, so he wants to buy a P250. You can echo things to yourself, which basically you would say echo space and then what you want to say. Whatever you put in here is going to be displayed in the console. So that's good for if you want to write like a how-to or like a list of what your keys are or your aliases, so you can say help in game and then they'll echo a list of what your commands are. Then there's more advanced aliases, which they're used for when you press and let go of keys. So in this example, we binded shift to plus walk volume, which is this one up here. So whenever you hold shift, it's going to do this, which is this. And then whenever you let go of it, it's going to do this. Which you don't really need to remember these, you just need to know that they exist and kind of why, like the plus and minus signs, you might see them around. Once you understand that, these are just things that you should just know that they're available. You don't necessarily have to like remember how to do these exactly. Moving forward, now that we have like the basics covered, I'm gonna just go into showing you some commands and just some things that I think you should really have in your AutoExec file. Once again, this file will be available so that you can just download it. You don't have to really listen to this, but it is good to know what you have available to you. View recoil tracking. Pretty much what this is going to allow you to do is, let me just stop it right. So the first thing that you're going to want to look into when creating your AutoExec file is primarily these two maps, crashes, crosshair generator, and view model generator. These are very powerful and easy to use tools. What you would do is click on play, offline with bots, workshop, view workshop. We're going to click right here. This is your search area. We're going to type CRASH and the letter Z, so crashes. Press enter. We have this view model generator right here and the crosshair generator. Pretty much what you would do is just hover over the map and you would click on the plus sign that would be here, similar to this one. I don't have a plus sign here because I'm already subscribed to these maps. And once you subscribe to those, you will see them inside of your workshop. So let's just take a quick look at the view model generator, and we're going to just do it with harmless bots. Once the map loads, if you look to the right, you'll see the presets that are currently available to you. As you can see, there is quite a difference as far as gun positioning with each of these. The one that I like to use is 3 clicks Phillips, and over here you can make adjustments. So if you want to move the gun upwards, you click up. Same goes for down, it'll move the gun down. These are your extremes, so it's going to move it to the extreme in the direction of down. and that would be up. It's kind of the same concept for left and right. If you want to move it all the way to the left, all the way to the right, all the way forward, all the way backwards. FOV, it moves your gun forward and backwards as well. I like to leave it like that, which is the most back that you can get it. However, you make the changes as you see fit. View model movement is how much your gun moves when you're walking. This is good. It'll help you know when to get an accurate shot. Like for instance, when I stop moving, you see how the gun is in one place, and when I'm not standing still, it'll move. So it's kind of like touching the same area each time, and that could help you as far as timing, but I personally don't prefer that. I like to use those. And let me actually set this how I would use it. The next thing you're going to do is share VM and copy this code. This is what we're going to be putting in our AutoExec so that each time the game starts, it'll make sure that our gun is in this position. So let's do that now. Alright, so let's go ahead and paste that code into our AutoExec file, and we're going to keep it moving. The next thing that we're going to want to do is go to Crash's Crosshair generator and hit go. So once the Crosshair generator finishes loading, we're going to want to take a look around. There's really a lot that you can know about this map. There's a lot of power in this map alone, and just the way that you can optimize your crosshairs. I like to use a dark setting because I can see my crosshair more on the background, and you really just have to go through all of these and kind of just fine tune your crosshair until you have it at a point that you like it, and you would go to share crosshair. We're going to copy this code and we're going to place it under our previous. So we'll go ahead and place that here. And the next thing that we're going to do, which is going to be relatively easy, is to choose our binds. There's quite a few tools for this. If you go to Google and type in CSGO binds, you'll find quite a few options. I like to use this one simply because I'm using the number pad anyways. So pretty much just select the button, like let's say 7. And you choose what you want to assign to 7. So I mean, let's say you use a Galil, you can select Galil and then press save, and now 7 is gonna buy a Galil if you were to press 7. And you know, you can go ahead and set up all of the keys in a similar fashion, and then once you're done, you would hit generate binds, which is gonna actually give you the output code of what you selected up here. So we'll copy that and add that as well. Also, you can comment things out. So like if I wanted to say my binds, and we can do my crosshair and my view model. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is a specific keybinds. Just want to keep in mind while we go through this section that these keys that you see highlighted here are the keys that are closest to you at all times when you're playing. These are the most important keys that you have, and I feel like a lot of people waste these keys. They just use it on dumb things that, I mean, you could easily put somewhere else. And I want to make sure that you guys don't do that, or that at least you make that choice on your own and don't just do it by default. The default keybinds are really good and very easy to get used to, but we don't want that to just make our decision moving forward and that be the reason why we have, you know, that keyboard layout. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So these are the keybinds that I like to use. When I press 1, I like for it to say A to the team in team chat. When I press 2, I like for it to say B. Pressing 3 is going to tell the bot to stay. Pressing 4 is going to remove any bullet holes that are on the walls, and I'll show you that in just a moment. When I press Q, it's going to pull out my knife and then a flash. Have to be careful when pulling out your knife before certain grenades. It will make it faster. However, if you don't have that grenade type, then you're going to end up just pulling out your knife, and that's not really always desirable. So the rest of my keybinds, we have a flash for Q, we have a grenade on C, Molotov on X, and the smoke on Z. And this is a really important one right here, inventory next non-grenade. Now, the reason I put this so close to my movement keybinds is because I really use this keybind a lot. Now, what this keybind is going to do, basically what next non-grenade is going to do for you is, let's just say for example you were going to throw a smoke and you decide, you know what, I need my weapon out right now. You press E and it's going to pull out your primary weapon. Now let's just say for example you don't have a primary weapon and you only have a secondary. Same scenario, you press E and now it's going to pull out your pistol. Another good thing about this keybind is, let's say you have both, you have your primary and the secondary. When you press the key, it's going to pull out the next one. So if you have your primary out, it's going to pull out your secondary and vice versa. So this is a good keybind to have. I really suggest having it. It's a button that you can press to pretty much know that no matter what the scenario is, you're going to pull out a gun as long as you have one. Very good keybind. To see your frames per second, you're going to type in CL_show FPS and then 1, press enter, and then on the top left hand side of your screen you will see how many frames per second you're getting. To disable that, you would do the same thing, but you would use 0 instead. Next thing that we're going to go over is very important. It's the training aliases and keybinds that we're creating. I like to have a keybind for the map that I use to train and warm up, which is Dust2, and what the name of that alias is D2, and what it's doing is setting the game type to 0 and the game mode to 1. Basically that's setting the game type to a competitive match. So if it was on team deathmatch or a different setting, it would have different defaults, and we don't want to work with those defaults. We want to use the ones that are set in the competitive. So that's what we're doing here. Remove all IDs is if you get banned from your own server for killing bots. This will make sure that you're unbanned. And this is calling the map. Just for reference, if you were to take all of these off, it would still work. You can just say D2 and that would call map DE Dust2. So if I was to just go into my console and type in D2, it's gonna pull up Dust2 now. And let's go back to that. I have RS, which basically it's just restarting the map. Sometimes you know, maybe you want to just restart the game, and that's what that's going to do for you. And down here is pretty much a lot of different things that are going to condition the game to be ready for you to train in. Just to be very brief about it, what's happening here is you're setting up a lot of different settings up here into individual aliases, and then you're calling all of those aliases from a master alias. I know it sounds confusing, but pretty much let's just forget about all of these for just a second. So we have an alias called train. Now whenever somebody types in train, it's gonna do all of this stuff. Now what is all of that stuff? It's this. So just to go over some of the key ones, most importantly, we're going to want to have SV cheats 1 as the first thing being called. And then no extras, just making sure that there's no extra time spent. Like MP freeze time 0, make sure that there's no freeze at the beginning of a round. MP round restart delay 0 is just making sure that if the round restarts, that there's no delay. Time stuff is going to make sure that the map doesn't just end before you're done training or practicing. So we're going to set the round time to 60, which is the maximum, the defuse time to 60. So if the objective is for you to defuse, then you have 60 minutes to defuse. If the objective was a hostage, then you would have 60 minutes for that, so on and so forth. Spawn protection, make sure that you can't get shot when you're in spawn. We want to take that off, so we put it to 0. Halftime duration 0. We don't want it to warm up, so we're just going to take warm up off by putting 0 for that. And the max round set to 10, just in case the round ends and you want to keep going. You don't want it to just end, you want for another round to just... Moving on to map stuff, next we have weapons. SV infinite ammo 1 is going to allow you to have infinite ammo without having to reload. If you were to change that to 2, you would still have infinite ammo, but you would have to reload in between each clip. MP buy anywhere is going to allow you to buy anywhere in the map. MPT default primary weapon is your primary default weapon as a T. So whenever you spawn, you're spawning with an AK-47 with this. And the same goes for CT. It's going to spawn you in with an AK-47. You can easily just, change these values out if you wanted a different gun there. And we're skipping over grenades for just a moment. We're going to go into default weapons, which pretty much you would choose what default weapon you want to spawn with as far as your secondary goes on which team. So MPT default and MPCT default. And here's just a standard weapon value. Default gren is going to set which grenades you spawn with depending on which team you're on. So MPT default grenades is going to accept a list of grenades that you want to spawn with. So right here we're saying we want to spawn with a smoke grenade, HE grenade, Molotov, and a flashbang, as long as the player is a T. And then we have the CT side, which I pretty much just copied and pasted and then just added a C next to the T. I'm going to skip over impacts for right now and go over to MISC, which is pretty much just an area where I put random things that I couldn't fit into one of these categories. Anyone can pick up the C4 set to 1, so if you're on CT you can grab the C4. And SV all talk is going to allow you to talk to the other team. Next we move on to teams, which is basically conditioning the team settings to make sure that it's ideal for training. We're not limiting the teams, so we have this set to 0. So basically any team can have any amount within the normal range that the game allows. We have MP auto team balance, which basically makes sure that, let's say you have 7 people on CT side, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to have 7 people on T side. MP respawn on death CT means if set to 1, then when the CT dies they're going to respawn, and the same goes for the T side. MP respawn immunity time is how far after you spawn are you able to get shot at. So if that number is set to anything other than 0, when you spawn you have a couple moments to either buy or just get ready to run around before you're able to get shot. And then we move on to misc but good. CS warn friendly damage interval. Pretty much what this is doing is whenever you shoot a teammate, it gives you a warning on the left side of your screen. This is how frequently that warning can pop up. I have it set to 0.2, which is a very fast limit, so if you're shooting your teammate very quickly, it's going to keep popping up very fast, letting you know that you're shooting your teammate. I like to have this at a high limit so that you're able to know when you're hitting a teammate. Obviously it's practice, and if you're shooting a teammate, it's probably for a purpose. MP free armor, just make sure that everybody spawns with armor if set to 1. Otherwise, if set to 0, they wouldn't spawn with armor. Bot chatter off. Bot chatter is when you shoot a teammate, or whenever you hear the bots just say something random, that's going to get rid of that. So if you were to just shoot a teammate a bunch of times with this off, they're not going to say anything. Otherwise, they would be saying just random things while you're shooting them. And MP solid teammates set to 0 basically means you can walk through your teammates. If you set this to 1, then they're going to be solid. So if you want to be boosting off of these bots or climbing or something to that effect, you're going to want to have this set to 1. Otherwise, I just set it to 0 so you could just walk right through them. For bot settings, we're pretty much going to tell the bots that spawn moving forward to join the CT team. And we're going to set friendly fire to 1 so that you are able to shoot your teammates. Bot stop set to 1 means the bots will not walk around. The bot quota mode set to fill is basically if you set the quota to, let's say, 20, what's going to happen is the game is going to try to fill that quota, so it'll try to spawn in bots to reach your quota. Bots don't shoot set to 1, basically the bots aren't going to shoot. So over here we told them not to move, over here we told them not to shoot, and I'm pretty sure that you don't need this one once you have this one on. However, if you don't have on bot stop and you choose to use bots don't shoot, they'll still run around but they won't shoot at you. Bot difficulty set to 3 is something I would suggest if you're going to let the bots either walk around or shoot at you, because it's going to be a higher difficulty setting than the default. Then we have the just in case line, which I don't think it's needed, but I have it here just in case you go into a game setting that has waves of spawns. it'll set it to 0. Same goes for the T side. And the win panel is what pops up after you win a game. The display time is going to be set to 0 because we just really don't want to be stuck having to see any of those kind of things. And then we go to restart now, which some of these are going to be redundant. The main ones that I'm worried about here are going to be these. So the restart delay is set to 0, so when you restart the game it's not going to take time. And the warm-up end is going to make sure that it's not warming up. Then it's going to restart. So this line right here actually restarts the round. So it's going to restart the round, and all of the stuff that we just fed it, that's when it's going to be processed, and it's going to make sure that all of it is being used. So up until this point we skipped over quite a few things, and now we're going to go over those. The clear decals is basically going to clear the walls and just objects of bullet holes and anything else that's been spawned due to your interactions with the maps. So if there's blood on the walls or bullet holes or anything like that, by pressing clear decals, it's just going to clear all of that up. This isn't a cheat. You can use it inside of competitive, and it's very helpful. There's just times where maybe there's like a blood splat or just bullets that make it very difficult to see somebody, and by pressing clear decals, that's going to take those away. So the next thing that we're going to go over is the grenades line, which we skipped over previously. It's going to be about the grenade trajectory, which has its own options. If you set this to 1, it's going to show you the grenade trajectory. Setting the dash setting to 1 is going to make it a dashed line, which would look something like this. This is the trajectory and a dashed line. Then there's the thickness of the line, which right now it's up to 1.5, which is huge. I generally leave it around 0.2, which I'll show you in just a moment. Then we have the time, which is how long it's going to be on screen before it disappears. And the same goes for the spectator version. This is for if anyone's spectating, how long is the grenade trajectory going to stay on their screen. And let me go ahead and show you the thickness. Set to 0.2. And that's when it's set to 0.2. That's how I normally use it, and I normally don't have it dashed. So let me show you how that looks. Set dash to 0. That's how I like to use it. The next thing that we're going to go over is the impacts line. This is a really important line. So SB show impacts, what it's going to do is it's going to show where your bullets are landing. And there's 3 different modes to this. There's 3, which is the one that I like to use. It shows you where the server is registering your bullets. So you're going to notice that there's going to be bullet holes in different areas that aren't, like, they're just not going to be in blue. So this bullet hole right here specifically wasn't in blue when I shot. Let me try to get another example. This one right here, this one right here. They're a little bit off. So what's happening is my client, my game is saying this is where I think they're landing, and then the server saying this is where they're actually landing. So I prefer to just see where the server thinks they're landing. You can also see where the client thinks they're landing. That's the red boxes now, which is setting number 2. And then you can see both. So as you can see, they're pretty close to each other, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're a little bit off from each other. So that's why I like to use the server side more. We have the impacts time, which is basically how long the impacts are going to be on screen for without clearing. So let's say we set that to 5. Now these are going to stay on screen for 5 seconds before they go away. And then the last thing we have for that line specifically is show bullet hits, which this is something that I don't see people talk about a lot, and I'm very surprised. I actually just found out about it today when I was making this video, and I'm really excited to show you guys about it. Pretty much what this one's going to do, let me go ahead and set it to 1 now. So what this is going to do is when you shoot something, or when you shoot someone, it's going to actually show you where the bullet hit, and that stays there. Even if this guy dies, like, it'll stay on his body. So this is really good for if you're just practicing something where you're not too sure if you're hitting, or like let's say you're up here on T-spawn and you're like, oh, I want to practice wall banging, but I don't know if, I'm not sure if that's a headshot, you know, how am I supposed to know? Well, I mean, this is one solution. Now you can come over here and inspect where your bullets actually hit. This is a very, very good line. Like I said, I'm really surprised people don't talk about this more. It's SV_show bullet hits, and you set that to 1. And one more thing before we move away from this specific alias that we were talking about, the train alias. CS warn friendly damage interval. We spoke about this earlier. I just wanted to go ahead and show you what that looks like. So if I was to shoot a teammate, you see on the left hand side how it's popping up kind of rapidly saying that we're shooting this teammate, and that's good because, you know, you might just want to be shooting that same teammate through the wall like we were a moment ago on T-spawn, and you might want to know exactly when you're hitting a teammate and when you're not. Alright, so next we're just gonna scroll through this AutoExec file which I prepared just for this video, and I'm gonna just try to explain whatever I feel is not straightforward about it. This buying keybinds area, I just placed my keybinds in here. This is what I like to use. I really suggest just making your own and feeling comfortable with what you've chosen. I personally like to have one keybind for my full buys, but I mean, I would suggest against it after having used it for so long. I think you should be very specific as to what you buy and be able to just fine tune your buys. You don't want to have this one blanket key that you can just press and it selects everything. It's better to be able to choose every $100 on where they go. Sometimes you're not going to want the extra flash. Sometimes you're going to want 2 flashes and not 1, and you want to have control over that. You don't want to just have a button that says just go, just buy now. You know, you buy now. You don't want that key. You want a key that says, you know, like what exactly do you want? How much are you trying to spend? And that's your goals when you're setting up your buying keybinds. Voice enable, this is a very important keybind. Sometimes your team is being toxic and you just really need them to shut up because you're trying to clutch, or just in general, you just really want them to shut up. I set mine to 9. You can set that to whatever you'd like. This is the important part. We have a toggle for voice enable. 1 and 0, pretty much what this is doing, I know it looks a little confusing, but it's saying if voice enable is set to 0 right now, then I want you to set it to 1. If it's set to 1, then I want you to set it to 0. So this is a toggle. You can press 9 once, turn it off, press 9 once again, or press 9 again, turn it back off. Moving on, we have this keybind which I showed you earlier. Once again, very important keybind. It'll switch you to your primary or secondary weapon. Weapon aliases, I like these a lot. What these do is pretty much if you're in a private game and you open up your console, if you were to type in one of these values on the left hand side, it's going to give you the stuff that's on the right hand side. So if I go into my console right now and I type in flash, it's going to buy a flashbang. Or it's not going to buy it, it's just going to give it to me. It's just going to give me a flashbang. Let me do it with an op so you can see it. Now I have an op. Let's keep moving. Nades, this is a good one. It's pretty much just going to fill up your nades. And also, if you already have all of your nades, it's just going to drop nades on the floor. So just to show you that, nades. Here, let's move over here. Nades. Now I just dropped a whole batch of nades. That's good if you want to just maybe no clip over a friend and drop some nades on him so he can throw them as well. The next keybind that we're going to be going over is the switch knife keybind, which I personally have keybound to F7. And pretty much what this is doing, this is a custom keybind, which is one that was made on our end. So while you're holding down the key that it's bound to, so while I'm holding down F7, this is going to happen. So it's going to pull out my knife, and it's going to clear any bullet holes or any blood splatters, anything like that from the walls. Then when I let go of the keybind, it's going to pull back out either my primary or my secondary weapon. This is specifically good if you're an opper. What that's going to do is, if you're zoomed in, you're not going to have to hit the zoom again and then the zoom again for it to just go back to default. You can just press the keybind and it's going to bring your op back to the ready where you can just run back around. Also, if you hold the keybind, you can just run around with your knife and know that as soon as you let go of this button, your op's going to be there again. One more scenario where I personally think it's very powerful is after you take a shot, you can just press it and either run away or just press it and you don't have to worry about it re-scoping back in automatically like this. You wouldn't have to worry about that because your op's just here ready to go. Now, I do want to warn you that this keybind is potentially very toxic. What I mean by that is I tend to use this keybind a lot, a little bit too much, so when I want to run around I might be holding this keybind, and then if I go to switch to a flash, it just creates issues. Another thing is sometimes you'll press it by accident, and if you're fighting someone, you don't want to press that by accident. It's a very, very big problem, and it's really up to you whether the keybind is good or not. So moving on, I have an alias here, DC, which is going to disconnect us from whatever server we're currently in. This way, if you open up your console, you can just type in DC and you'll disconnect. It's just a little bit more convenient, and also DC can take you out of a competitive match for a number of reasons. If you just want to go to your inventory and you don't want to have to press escape and go through that process, and you won't be disqualified from that match until your time is up or you hit abandon after that. Also, if the game is over, you can press DC and you don't have to wait for the loading screens and all that stuff that comes after the match where they show you people's ranks and stuff like that. Let's keep it moving. Okay, right here what we're doing is we're calling other exec files. So I have bound to 7 my main crosshair, and then I have bound to 6 my pistol crosshair. Now it's also pulling out my pistol when I do this and my primary. So you can call other CFG files just by saying exec and then their name, and inside of this file, just think about it as if this was the whole file, pretty much just this. This is my crosshair settings, by the way. If I grabbed all of these crosshair settings and I just went and put them into a blank file and I named them this, I would have to put that inside of the same location. So let me show you that. So we would go into where we have our AutoExec. This is my AutoExec right here, and then we would have this file, and let me just show you that. This is what it looks like. It just has my crosshair, so anything that Crash's crosshair generator gave me, I put it in here, I gave it its own name, and then I called it from in here. It's pretty straightforward. Give it a name, you put it in the same location, it has to end in the .cfg, and whenever you call it, anything that's inside of this file is going to get called. So my crosshair looks one way when I have this on, and then it looks another way when I have this on. Just to show you. Oh, well, since that's an op, you're not going to see the crosshair. Here we go. Those are my different crosshairs that I use. This one is a static one, it doesn't move. And this one's dynamic, which you can see why I wouldn't want to have this on my primary weapon, but maybe wouldn't mind it for my pistol. And moving on, I have my no clip bound to my 0 on my keypad. This name right here, I had to find it in one of the generators that I talked about earlier. Pretty much you just keybind that key, and then whatever it gives you in return, that's the name of the key. So if I was to go to a generator and generate a bunch of keybinds for different keys, now I know those keys names, and now I can use those names here in place of this one. Let's see, I have my crosshair settings. Now sniper width is really important. Pretty much what this is going to be the width of the line that your op is gonna, or that your snipers will utilize. So you can see the line that I would normally use to aim, and let me go ahead and change that value to something drastic so you can see like a big difference. Let's make it 25. So now on 25 you can see it's obviously not how you would want to use it, but this is the default. Default's really skinny, so you might not like that. I personally like to have it on like 1.5 or 2.5 because it's a little bit easier to see. but it's not so much like bigger that you're not able to see in certain instances. It will cover up more pixels, so you do have to keep that in mind, but you really have to just balance whether you want to see more or less, whether you want it to be easier to see or more difficult to see. And let's move on. HUD show target ID. This is just when you aim at somebody, whether their ID is going to pop up or not. It's set to 0 here. I normally like to keep that on 1. I like to see people's names pop up when I aim at them, but that's just a personal preference. The zoom sensitivity ratio mouse is pretty much, if your sensitivity is 1.0, that's just what you normally play on. When you zoom in, whatever value you have set, that's going to be how much faster or slower you move. So let's say, for example, you set this value to 1.1. Now, you got to realize that 1.0 is what you're currently on normally. That's your normal sensitivity. This is 1.1, so it's that much faster. So if your normal sensitivity is 100, this would be 110. Next, we have some radar settings. I don't think that people would like these settings too much. I personally like them a lot. Pretty much what happens with the radar is as you move around, it moves. I'm sure this is what you're used to. I have it to where it's not always centered. So I'm not the center of my radar. The center of the radar is generally the center of the map. Icon scale is how big the icons are for you and your teammates, and I'll show you these in just a second. And CL rotate, or radar rotate, is whether the radar is going to move around. So just to show you an example, this is what my radar currently looks like. And as you can see, like right now when I'm moving around, it's not changing. It's not really, well, it is changing, but it's just changing a little bit. Like it's only moving a little bit to compensate for my movement through the map, and it's not rotating. So if I look around, it's not moving. The reason I like it like this is because A is always in the same spot, B is always in the same spot, cat is always in the same spot. And these are just call outs on this specific map, but they're always in the same spot, and it takes some getting used to, but I mean, you can pretty much assume that when you look at the radar, everything is in the same spot every time, you know, give or take like a centimeter or two. Okay, so let's keep it moving. Safe zone X and Y, this is basically a normal setting that you would get if you were to go into your help and options, video settings, and then HUD size. That's what I'm changing here. So the X and Y values are pretty much where the HUD's gonna be. So as you can see, it's here now. But if I was to exec AutoExec, which exec AutoExec, what that does is it just calls your AutoExec and it says, hey, give me all of your settings. So if you change something that you know you have saved in your AutoExec, you're calling your AutoExec and saying, hey, give me your values. So you're recalling those values again. So if I was to call it again, you see how my radar went back out to the left to where you can't see it anymore. Oh, and one more thing about that, the reason you can't really see my radar or some things on the left and right of my screens is because I use multiple monitors, so it's really hard to make a decent viewable video and have 3 monitors at the same time, if that makes sense. In order for you to see like all of my screens, it would have to be really stretched and really difficult to see, or more difficult than it already is. Moving on, this we already went over. This is in regards to our view model. Sensitivity, I will be posting a link as to a good video for you to watch regarding your sensitivity. That's very important. Like, I would say this is probably more important. Well, it is more important than your AutoExec, but I mean, they're both really, really important for your advancement. I can't tell you how many times I've changed my sensitivity, and I don't think you should frown upon the change of your sensitivity. Like, for example, you'll get used to your sensitivity and you'll think like, oh, it doesn't make sense to change my sensitivity. I've been playing like this for 3 months, 4 months, a year. Obviously, if I change sensitivities, I'm not going to play as good as I used to. But to tell you the truth, I just recently went from 0.8 to 0.79, and it was one of the best things I could have done. It gives you more precision, but you know what, I'm not going to go over the pros and cons of changing your sensitivity. Just know that that's something you can store in your AutoExec as well. Your maximum dedicated search max ping. This is also a setting that you can find inside of your standard settings. I believe that would be in game settings right here, max acceptable matchmaking ping. And pretty much just putting this value higher is gonna make it easier for you to find a match, but it's gonna make the matches that you find possibly laggier. So right now, if I was to leave this on 131, I'm pretty much telling the servers, hey, I'm willing to find, or I'm willing to play in a match that I have, or that has 131 ping for me, which I would say don't do it. Honestly, I like to stay in the 80s, or, you know, around that area. Less than 100 is ideal for me. I can leave it on 86 and I'll be fine with that. No problem. So that's that. Let's see. That's pretty much it for the exec file, at least for right now. This is a really long video, sorry guys. Hope you watched it, hope you enjoyed, hope it wasn't too wordy. You do want to make sure that at the end of your file you have these lines. At least I like to, they're not necessary. The echo AutoExec config loaded is pretty much just, it went through all of this stuff and it reached the bottom enough to the point where it can read this out to me. So if I run my AutoExec, AutoExec, let's see here, right here it says AutoExec config loaded, and that means it ran through the whole entire AutoExec file. It reached the bottom without an error, and it read that line out to me. So this is good. This means it ran successfully, and this writes all of the settings that you were setting up here. It writes them to your local settings file. Basically, it writes them locally for you. And that's pretty much it. Let me just take another quick look. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or any comments, please do let me know. Don't forget to comment on the video. Don't forget to like the video. It really helps. Appreciate it, and I hope this helps, guys.